I'm Leah from Island Sun Tarot. Welcome to the first part and hopefully a 3-part series of my X decks. So it's been just over a year since I moved to Hawaii, and there was a lot of purging and going through things, everything really, not just tarot, books, you name it. So since it's been over a year, I went back and looked at some of the decks that I had culled from my collection, and it ended up being about a little less than half of my whole collection before the move. So I just wanted to go and look through them, have a think about the ones that I got rid of, and it turns out off of this list I've only repurchased one of them. So in this video we're going to be talking about 5 decks, and then I'm also going to discuss my reasoning behind moving it along, getting it out of my collection, and the deck that I chose, or the decks that I chose to keep instead for the big move, and whether or not I thought that that was the right choice. So first, let's get started. These two kind of go hand in hand, and so does the one that I kept instead. So first I have the Angel Tarot and the Guardian Angel Tarot, both at the time by Doreen Virtue and Radley Valentine. All kind of formatted the same way, same cardstock, published by Hay House. And for me, the one that I kept is the Fairy Tarot. So, little background on the Fairy Tarot. I was working with one deck for several years, and then I finally bought 2 more decks, the Fairy Tarot and the Shadowscapes. This deck really helped me I don't know, come into myself as a tarot reader. It really helped me grow off of thinking that I just needed to learn the RWS and that was the only way to go. So there's a lot of love and feeling behind that deck. Anyways, with the Angel Tarot and the Guardian Angel Tarot, it's formatted very similarly, where it has the description sort of down at the bottom with a large picture, and it's color coded. Same thing with the Angel Tarot. The Guardian Angel Tarot had a lot more border going on and more frames, different sort of wallpaper feeling, and a lot of people have talked about that deck like it's like the grandma deck, like talking to your grandma. Major hug deck, it totally is. But for me, this Fairy Tarot deck kind of gives me that feeling as well, where I was reading for my grandma a lot of the time when I first started and talking with her about the cards. And so for me, this Fairy Tarot also kind of has all that love and feelings in it as well. So for the Angel Tarot, gorgeous. I just absolutely loved it because I believe it was the Swords suit. Yes, the suit of air was all unicorns. And I absolutely loved that about it. I had never really worked with angels in general, so I kind of had done a little bit of a study on it. But it just turned out that out of all of the 3 decks that I had that were formatted like that by, Radley Valentine, this Fairy Tarot was the one that I had the biggest connection to, and the one that I ended up using the most. So in that culling, this was sort of an easy choice. It was easy for me to get rid of the Guardian Angel Tarot. It was more so the regular Angel Tarot where I really just loved some of the artwork. So that was kind of hard for me, but in the last year since culling it for my collection, I haven't felt the need to go and purchase it again because I've been using the Fairy Tarot. So those are the first 2. Next, these 2 sort of go hand in hand as well. So first we have the Radiant Rider-Waite and then the Centennial Waite. But there's a caveat there. First, let's talk about the Radiant Rider-Waite. That was my first deck, and even though I had had it for years, by the time I got rid of it, it still looked brand new. I just I studied that deck so much, but I kept it perfectly inside its little box, and I totally babied it. I didn't just like chuck it in my bag and go. No, I like kept it out on a table. If I put it in the box, they were all perfectly put away. But sadly, that deck just had a few negative feelings attached to it, but it was all on me and how I perceived learning the tarot and how I wanted to go about it, because I was just very, I was treating each card like it was a flashcard, and I just wanted to memorize. And that was not, for me, that wasn't the best way to go about it. And I had that deck for years, and I thought that that was the only way to go. And I felt like I couldn't graduate or upgrade to a different deck without knowing that one completely and utterly. That was it. Of course, that wasn't the case. But once I started moving on to other decks, I never picked up that deck again, but I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. So for years, it just sat there on the shelf, and I had the big box set with like the big glossy book. And yeah, it just sat in the box after those first few years that I used it. And then thinking to myself, well, I should probably at least just have a normal RWS in my collection. I bought what I thought was a centennial weight, but it ended up being a knockoff off of eBay. And so it had sort of a like compass design for the backing, but on the other side, it was that centennial weight looking card. It was sepia tone, but they were so tiny and really narrow. So when I got the box in the mail, I was like, oh no, I messed up. This isn't right. And I even edged it in a really pretty like sepia cream color. And I used it for studying, and I definitely liked it a little bit more than the Radiant Rider-Waite. And I just stopped using it. Why did I stop using it? Because I got the Hansen Roberts Tarot. This deck is so fun and so beautiful. I love the light color pencil feel to the artwork. So once I got this deck, it was done for those other two. I had already not picked up the the Radiant Rider-Waite for years by the time I got this. But that Centennial one, even though it was a knockoff, I did like that it was smaller and I could take it with me. Well, this deck is a lot smaller too. You can see, let me just hold up because I already showed the Fairy, which is a very large, like Oracle size card. You can see how small it is. More narrow than even a regular playing card. So this one was great to pack along and take with. I don't know if I showed this one. Oh. And yeah, I love this deck. So the other sat on the shelf. So again, this was an easy pick when it came to culling the collection. When I looked at those other two, I knew that this was the one that I wanted to keep. And this is a really great one that I love using to read for other people, because it's very classic, but I feel like the artwork is just a little softer, a tad bit more well received. Some of the faces can be a little wonky, but not in a creepy way, or at least not to me. Maybe to somebody else they might think, oh, that's a little creepy, but like, I don't know, I think it's sweet. And I've just really enjoyed this deck. I still use it to this day. I've had it for years. And I really feel like it's a staple in my collection, and I couldn't fathom getting rid of this one, but yet it was easy to get rid of the other two. Okay. And then the last one we're going to talk about for this video is the Riderless Tarot. That one was by Nikisha, and it's an Etsy deck, self-published. Her Etsy shop is called Rabbit Tarot, and she has some gorgeous decks. But for me, I was afraid to get an animal deck because I thought to myself, how could I possibly look at an animal and get the same feelings that I do from like the Fairy Tarot or Shadowscapes or even the Hansen Roberts. And I just really wasn't comfortable with trying to get an animal deck, and nothing was really speaking to me. But when I saw the Riderless Tarot, it was all horses. I absolutely love horses, and I thought maybe that'll do it for me. And I got it, and I flipped through the deck, and it was beautiful, watercolor style artwork, and I never used it. I have no idea why. It literally just sat on the shelf. I did that first flip through, and I was like, okay, a horse running, and a horse walking, a horse laying down. So even though I love horses, it just really wasn't giving me what I thought I should be feeling from an animal deck. And I like to tell myself that my first animal deck that I got was the Animal Totem Tarot, published by Llewellyn by Lisa Robertson with artwork by Eugene Smith. But in reality, when setting up for this video, it really was the Riderless Tarot, except it was all horses. Still an animal deck though, right? I just never used it. So, as I like to say, the Animal Totem Tarot is my first animal deck. That's not true. It's probably more like the second. But this was the deck that did it for me when it comes to animal decks. And so I so fondly look at this and think this was my first animal deck, but really it wasn't. It just was that first one that really made me love animal decks, really gave me a beautiful understanding and respect for the animals chosen for each card, which for this deck is just gorgeous. They did a beautiful job. The artwork is really lovely. Oh. So this Animal Totem Tarot is the deck that made it easy for me to cull the Riderless Tarot that I never used. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love horses, and they're beautiful, absolutely gorgeous in every way. But there's something about the variety of the different animals on these cards that really helped me read the tarot with different animals. So then also that goes into other decks that I have, like the Crystal Unicorn Tarot, and then also the Crow Tarot, where it's one animal repeatedly. But I wasn't able to fully use decks like that until I had this first. So maybe if I had gone back and tried to use the Riderless after using this for quite some time, I might have respected it a bit more. But at the time when I was getting ready to move, I hadn't picked it up in forever. And I was super cutthroat, and I probably should have kept it, but I didn't, and I moved it along. I was going through so many different things. I think what was really hard besides the tarot was books. Gosh, I just had boxes and boxes of books, and it was really hard. Easy things to go through: clothes. Moving to Hawaii, I left so much winter stuff at my parents' house. Like, oh, if I'm going to visit around the holidays, I'll leave you guys with the heavy jackets that I don't want to pack. But books and tarot, so hard. Also, I culled my model horse collection. That was hard. Anyways, so the Animal Totem Tarot, I can no longer say this is my first animal deck. My first animal deck was the Riderless Tarot. It just didn't work out for me. But I loved it. The artwork was gorgeous. So those are the 5 decks that I wanted to mention for this part 1. It looks like it's going to be 3 parts. I do have some decks in purgatory right now, so there might be a part 4, but we'll have to see how it goes. I'm just going to give it some time. But I thought, just after passing the year mark of moving and everything, and don't get me wrong, it was months worth of preparation in order to move, so for me it feels like it's been longer than a year. But I thought it was a good time to go back and look at the decks that I had culled and kick off this X decks mini-series. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. I love hearing about decks that people love and why they love it and why they're obsessed with it, and the honeymoon phase is never ending, because I'm like that with so many different decks. But then there's some times where you wonder, when you watch somebody's walkthrough, well, how'd you get on? You feel like maybe you don't see it anymore and you're only seeing other decks. Or maybe when a deck is kind of like going through a hype, like I'll never forget when like the Wild Unknown came out and I just didn't want to watch like anybody's videos because I was like, God, anything else, please, just because it didn't speak to me. But what I wanted to know was why decks didn't work out for some people. And so this sort of X decks is kind of grown off of watching like Lisa's anti-hauls and how she just honestly talks about why she's not gonna get something. And I thought, that's a fun spin. So going back and looking at these decks that I've already had in my collection and either worked with or didn't work with, I just thought it'd be a fun conversation. So I would maybe love to see below any decks that you had in your collection that you culled and you regretted it, or you don't regret it, or something that you just love instead, and that's why it was easy to let go. So, part 1, stay tuned for part 2. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.